Fragments of Silicon. We may be a train wreck, but at least we're a metaphorical train wreck.
All right, welcome to another installment of Fragments of Silicon. I'm your host, Adam. Joining me as always, our Galax and Petty fan. Let us get to the news. Petty, why don't you start us off this week?
So we have gotten the Arctic chill here. We had temps with wind chills in the negative 20 below zero range. And over the weekend, the drain in the kitchen froze. So we've spent the past 3 days trying to get that to drain, and it finally decided it was going to open up this morning. I'm very tired between the cold causing, my legs and stuff to hurt because hooray for neurological disorders. And just worrying about, the sink drain. I am very tired. So if I sound kind of out of it, apologies. But yeah. As far as gaming, we're getting feedback from somebody. I think it's Adam. All right.
Discord must have messed the settings up.
It likes to do that, yeah. As far as gaming stuff goes, not really a whole lot. Me and Ogre have done a little bit more of Dragon Ball Z Kakarot because why not? And then we're currently on Namek. I think we're just about to start fighting Frieza, if I'm remembering Dragon Ball correctly or DBZ correctly.
Now this is real Namek and not fake Namek, right?
Yes.
You're not going to see fake Namek in any of the videos.
That was original anime filler.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's still funny to reference, though.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it wasn't funny to sit through.
Oh, no. There's a reason why I was removed from Kai.
Something comedy equals pain plus time.
I guess?
Let's not dignify that.
Indeed. And yeah, other than that, not a whole lot's really happening, so I guess next?
That would be Galax.
I had to rake the roof again because we got some snow again last night and yesterday. Enough that the office closed really early yesterday before I even was going to go in, so I worked from home, but so that was kind of a weird weekend, and my arms are tired today, but no problems with anything, just tired. Other than that, nothing too specific. My family's Christmas thing went well over the weekend. Everybody was able to make it except for my sister and her new boyfriend. Which isn't too bad when you have that number of people. Our gift passing game was a little bit awkward because most people ended up with their own stuff this year because of a combination of the people who always mess with the gift order were actually behaving themselves mostly, and I think just the number of people we had. The way the game goes is we read the night before Christmas out loud, and you pass the present that you brought or that you're holding every time the word "the" gets said. So it would be predictable if people didn't mess around with it. But my dad and my uncle usually do that. So we just kind of traded around afterwards. And let's see, it was also the Splatfest, which I got to ruler, but Team Solo prefer to spend this holiday solo, just swept every category, which I think is a little bit unfortunate, but that's what happened. And over the long weekend, I decided to finally not complete, but at least do the ending of Tears of the Kingdom. So that was good.
Oh God, I need to get back to that.
It was a generally pretty good ending, although there was a period where I was not sure what I was supposed to be shooting at.
Sounds like a Zelda game.
Mm-hmm. Also, I'm not as good as flurry rushing as I thought I was, apparently.
Didn't they change it for Tears?
I think the timing varies based on who you're fighting is the main thing.
Yeah, I remember seeing something about as somebody
Like
on the
on
internet
some
put it, they
things,
royally botched it.
On some attacks, the timing is extremely generous, but on the one that is relevant to the final boss fight, it's not. Oh, and I did forget to take pictures of all phases of the final boss, so I definitely have to do it again at least once.
Fun.
Because there's nothing that says appropriate behavior in a final battle like whipping out your camera.
Yeah, you gotta have your selfie with Ganon, right? Somebody has made a commission of that. I know there is.
Oh, I'm sure. So yeah. Other than that, been playing Pokemon Scarlet, and I am not doing Mochi Mayhem yet because mostly I'm still trying to level up some guys so that I can do more of the League Club battles.
And that's for the new Mythical, right?
Yeah.
Is that a post-game thing, or can I just like hop on and do that?
You can get the item whenever.
All right.
It's just a connect to internet mystery gift.
All right, I will also have my niece
You
do
can't
that.
trigger the event until you've cleared the story arc, the Teal Mask. I don't know if you have to have cleared the story arc, the Indigo Disc. You might have. And you have to have cleared the Academy Ace tournament at least once.
Don't you need to do the Ace tournament?
I think it means once beside the default time, but I'm not sure. That's all I've heard about it.
I mean, I'll be happy to roll up with some level 99s and go rock it again.
It's pretty much, and the reason you have to do that is because after you do it,
it's a winning thing.
Well, no, the Academy Ace tournament. Actually, I think that might even be after the Indigo Mask. The Academy Ace tournament's levels get bumped up from like 50 to like 80, I think.
I mean, I'll still roll up with my Death Squad. It's fine.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just not so easy that you can literally AFK it, which is something that people used to do, because that used to be the best way to get money.
Oh, yeah. Anyway.
But it's no longer, after the upgrade, it's no longer easy enough that you can literally just have a pixelate Sylveon hyper voice everything to death. I think that's about it.
Okay.
Hopefully this next week we're going to be able to do the Monday strategy thing with Mac again. He needed more to do more work this Monday, so we didn't.
Look, I wouldn't hold your breath anytime soon.
I'm not. I'm just saying he said hopefully.
It's very aspirational, I'm sure.
Uh-huh. He wants to finish Langrisser, and I guess that would be interesting to see.
I mean, if he can get his life into sorts.
Yeah, he picked this franchise, not me. I don't really know much about Langrisser. it mostly seems kind of like Fire Emblem with a lot less unit variety and
That's beside the point.
a lot of tar pits.
Anyway, so I guess it's my go.
Mhm.
Not much this week. I get it's been cold here. Of course, what that means it's a balmy 44 degrees. Like, not quite the Arctic chill that you guys are getting, but for Florida, this is cold. Like, you just don't get a lot
Weirdly, it actually hasn't been that cold here.
Well, it's also related to, I think, the jet stream and how it's been.
Yeah, I think the ocean air stuff prevents the polar vortex from breaking as much right by the coast. Or something.
It's a whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like if we were a climatology podcast, we get into it, but we're not. So, Anyway, let me see. Still playing Tales of Symphonia. Gearing up the show for March bookings. That's about it. Not every week can be a thrill a minute. Anyway, so merrily we shall roll along to the interview portion of the broadcast. And joining us once again is Charles Wolf of Charles Wolf Music.
Hello, thanks for having me.
No problem. Yeah, it's been, I think, about a year since we had you on the program last.
Mm-hmm. That's correct. It's been a year.
And you seem to have been keeping yourself busy.
Yeah, always.
In the interim. Right, since we don't have to go through lengthy introductions and backgrounds and all that, what have you been working on?
Certainly. A variety of projects this past year. This has been kind of a professional year of transition for me. I am still, of course, working with lots and lots of indie developers and really loving that. But I've also taken a little more time to work on some personal projects and to work on some of my own personal ambitions and goals. One of the biggest changes that's changed since last time I talked to you all was I was part-time running a music studio and teaching music lessons and things like that. And since then, I've shifted out of that, and I'm happy to say I'm now working as a communication and marketing manager at a nonprofit in the area that deals with like food access and food security. I live here in Santa Fe, New Mexico, which has also been cold. We've had a lot of snow the past 2 weeks up here in the mountains. And it's been awesome to transition away in a certain sense from teaching. I taught music lessons for 15 years. And so getting to do something new is kind of revitalizing in its own way professionally. But then also continuing to still compose and write music and collaborate with a lot of really amazing people. I would say my biggest project most recently was working with Zoozle Zone. And it was sort of a rediscovering a score. I had maybe it was a year before, maybe a year and a half. I can't remember exactly. Rebecca from Zoozle Zone asked me to score for 3 or 4 tracks for Jackie's Wacky Adventure, kind of in a adventure cartoon style, but had an interesting prompt for me, brief, which was make it metal, but kind of poppy and also cartoonish. And so to get that vibe took a minute to get the right sound set to really feel. And what I ended up doing was using a very like PS1 style sound fonts for the instruments and kind of a very flat kind of across the board sound to get that kind of candy-esque rock vibe. So it was an interesting challenge to find that zone. But it was really fun because I got to go back this year, like literally a couple months ago, and do the trailer for the game. And so, of course, once you do a trailer, you want to reuse material from the OST. And so going into the soundtrack and figuring out, okay, how did that theme go again? What was that bass line? What was that riff on the guitar? And listening to my own music and having to do auditory analysis on it to remind myself what I had done previously. Because when I composed it the first time, I was improvising right off my keyboard right into my DAW. So I didn't have it notated, which would have been faster. So I took the time to renotate some parts, and it was a lot of fun.
So, what does a PlayStation 1 sound font consist of?
I would say it's sort of a RuneScape, if anyone's played that game, kind of level of quality. It has it's better than 8-bit. It's more like a 16-bit sound, but it's it's very canned sounding. It does sound, everything has a bit of fakeness to it, which is perfect for a cartoon style game. It's a very like low res sort of sound, if that makes sense.
Sort of. I'm assuming you're talking like the MIDI section here.
It's very MIDI. It sounds very MIDI, and it's purposely like leaning into that MIDI-esque sound. It's chiptune like.
Yeah, because PlayStation had the two facets. Sometimes you had Red Book audio, like real licensed music and all that. But on the other hand, you had like stuff that was harking back to the Super Nintendo.
Right. I would say exactly.
Final Fantasy VII soundtrack comes to mind immediately.
Exactly. And Final Fantasy VII soundtrack, particularly the piano sound, it's a very short sample they're using with a quick repeat of the notes, so it has a kind of a doubling effect. And that's exactly the kind of vibe I would say in terms of like the sound quality and the sound vibe, very similar. And it would definitely leaning more towards Super Nintendo than even Final Fantasy is in terms of this soundtrack. But super fun game, very, very colorful, very, very cartoon. And so the music needing to kind of capture the energy of that. And I think one of the followers of Rebecca of Zoozle Zone had mentioned to her the character had this kind of looping animation of a head bob, and that's where the idea is like, oh, he's headbanging. Well, that's where we got to make it kind of metal-esque. That was where that idea was born.
And how many tracks did you produce for Jackie's Wacky Adventure?
I think it was like 4 or 5 in total, plus the trailer. So not a high amount for this particular project, and that's due to the fact that I think this particular independent developer, limited budget, and only needed so many tracks for key points in the game, and so we worked together to create distinctive sections that was really going to capture a vibe for each level, and kind of took a almost Mario-like approach where you have these sort of looping areas over a course of one level. You get to the next level, you get a new soundtrack to go with that level, and that was the most sort of a great way to be efficient with your music purchasing.
Did you ever try to explore trying to make the music dynamic?
I have done that in a few games in the past, and it's always great to get to do that. But that is a very labor-intensive process, and it costs quite a bit more because it takes so much more back end to fill in all of that. And because again, I want to primarily work, and I love working with independent developers. There's the limitation of cost, obviously, because a lot of people are buying this music out of their own back pocket. And I want to support that. And I want to be able to provide a great product and not sacrifice on the quality that I'm putting into it. But if we're doing very responsive, this thing and that thing, and this has to trigger and that has to be coded, and you do all the time into all the laborious nature of that, you're now quadrupling the cost of the project. And so I find that writing things with kind of looping sections, and then we can bridge from one type of loop to a different one, and it just means that you're going to get more music for a better cost.
Right. Speaking of such things, this is probably a good place to play one of the tracks.
Certainly.
Petty is in position.
All right. Anything in particular, or?
Why don't you play? Since we're talking about Jackie, why don't we play a little of that so people can hear this music?
Alrighty.
Yeah.
Give me a moment. Let's just roll the trailer audio because I'm a little out of sorts at the moment.
That can work since he did compose the trailer music.
Yep.
A messenger arrives. Another murder in Toontown
Since he did compose the trailer music.
takes you back home where it all began. An ancient prophecy is set in motion.
Okay, we can stop it there. I think that gives people an idea what the vibe is like.
Okay.
Thank you. That's awesome. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
Well, I was thinking about that score more. One of the things I was always trying to do with it, because I'm using these sound font samples that are very, very tight. I wanted a lot of conversation happening. So making sure there was multiple guitars, multi-tracking guitars, and then having them speaking to one another and like have this sort of counterpoint, this note against note interplay back and forth, and there's always this kind of conversation, and that's very typical in a lot of classic rock and early metal, like stuff from Dust, for example. That band, there's a lot of that kind of vibe to it, and so that was something we really wanted to bring in to that project. This year has been interesting. I've written a lot of trailer music. It's been primarily trailer music over soundtracks. And that's been really fun because you get to then have the challenge of not only you're writing music for a game with that game's usually the soundtrack in mind, or maybe just writing a trailer. And so then you're trying to capture the feeling of the game, but then you're also having to mirror the visuals. So if there's a big shift in the visuals, the music needs to shift accordingly. So you're having to do this sort of double work of you're matching the music and you're marrying it to that visual, and then trying to get the timings down so that you can adjust that a couple different ways. One is change the length of some of the measures to be shorter or longer so that you end up changing on the right points. The other thing you can do is actually change the tempo of the music so that when you get to the beats, they're going to be syncing up. The pulse will be syncing up with the visuals, which something people don't think about very much, but it is important to do, because if it's way out of sync, you're going to feel that. And if it's in sync or close to in sync, it'll be much more resonant, if that makes sense.
It does. Like, desyncing is very distracting.
Exactly. And I've seen professional projects where things are a little out and you're just like, ooh, that was a little rough there. But, sometimes there's short deadlines and things have to be done quickly. And sometimes you just got to roll with it. If you have like 24 hours to turn something around, you got to move quick. So I'm very grateful that all the projects I've worked on up till now have been much more. I've had a few days or if not a week to work on things. And I like that pacing better. In the film world, especially, write a whole 3 hour of music and, oh yeah, you got a week to do it. That's hard. That's a lot of work to do in such a short time. So, yes. Well, speaking of intros, I got to do a cool project that this is forthcoming, but I can kind of talk about it because it is complete on my end. This is from Masakatsu Kun, and is doing a really cool animated project for their senior thesis in college. And the project is called In the Halls of Beverly Academy, and it's sort of a witchy Disney-style cartoon is the animation style. And so what I did, they're going to animate to the music. Sometimes you'll have the visual and then you'll write the music to the visual. Mm-hmm. In this case, I had the privilege and the pleasure of writing the music first. And then using the music will then inform the visual. So it's the other way of doing it. And it was amazingly fun to write a sort of listening to stuff I think there's a show called Owl House, and there's another one. I forget the name of that she had sent me. But listening to some modern Disney TV shows, kid shows, and then trying to figure out what's about that sound, what's
Might
about
have been
the chord.
Amphibia.
Yeah, and that was really fun. So that's another project I worked on recently.
Yeah, if it wasn't Amphibia, I'm going to guess The Ghost and Molly McGee.
Actually, it wasn't either of those. But that's
Chip?
totally doesn't matter. It was just fun, and I like getting. That's also available on my SoundCloud. If people want to check it out. But it's fun to have that high energy, lots of drums, backbeat, really great stuff.
I'm like, it's an interesting choice for a game like this. Like, not like you say a PlayStation 1 vibe, but I got more of a Mega Drive feel from the track.
Okay, fair. That's fair.
Yeah,
That's fair.
it's like maybe like Amiga, Commodore 64. It's got that loose European energy to it.
That's fair, and that's probably because I have a very classical background, and so sometimes that comes through a bit. I'm classically trained as a composer. As I talked about last year, I have a master's degree in music from Texas State University in composition, and so and I grew up when I was listening to music at a formative age of 14, which is sort of when people lock into their sound sets and their ideas of what music is and what makes good music. I was listening to a ton of classical literature, so that definitely has invaded my sound, whether or not I can imitate other poppier, rockier things, but ultimately the classical piano is in there because that's just how I write music. So I guess it's part of my identity as a composer, whether I want it to be or not. That's sort of how that works. So, anyhow,
Anyway,
yeah, go ahead. Questions?
Yeah.
At this point, I can talk about more stuff, but questions.
well, yeah. Well, it's more. You were mentioning when we were getting all the equipment set up that you had done a Kickstarter in this past year.
That's right. Yes, beginning of the year, second quarter, I worked on a sci-fi music soundtrack called Ad Astra, which we did a Kickstarter for. I'm very happy to say that there was we raised over $500 for this soundtrack, and it was fully funded, which was my goal. And wasn't trying to go super ambitious with this Kickstarter. Kickstarters are hard. They're a lot of work on the back end. If you ever run one, it's a lot of social media management. It's daily posting. It's a lot of getting people hyped and excited and posting to a ton of platforms as far as you can. To fully fund a Kickstarter without doing paid advertisement, which is what I did. I did it fully organic, just leveraging the followers I've gotten on Twitter and on Instagram and other platforms to do a Kickstarter was a good goal, and I really enjoyed the process, but it's a ton of work to do it. So something you definitely should think through and have a plan before you go into it, and then commit to the fact that it's going to be hours of work. But it was so much fun to write this sort of sci-fi soundtrack music and to create an 11-track soundtrack. Started in December of last year, right around when I talked to you all, and then continued finishing it out at the beginning of the year. I produced, and then we were able to get some stretch goals unlocked and got some extra tracks. And we also got 15 atmosphere ambiances that were sort of background. So the idea behind this project was, it was going to give like 30 tracks of audio to people making video games in a sci-fi sound, and they can just drop it right into their projects and they're good to go. That was step one. That was really important to me because I really want music to be accessible, good music to be accessible to people who are making games. The other thing that I wanted it to do was I wanted it to be useful for TTRPG players, people playing games that are in a sci-fi setting. There's many of them. I won't go into those, but as someone who loves to play tabletop role-playing games myself, of a wide variety, I know that it's really fun, especially when you're running a game like that, to have background music. And so this also doubly works for that as well, as sort of ambient background to not only a video game, but also a tabletop game.
Well, Alex, that's your field. So anything you want to insert into the conversation?
Sorry, I missed a second. I was responding to someone. Sorry.
It's all good.
Yeah, his Kickstarter music consisted of tracks for tabletop RPGs.
Oh yeah, no, that's not really something that my group uses much. We usually just put on a YouTube playlist of random associated stuff, and then it ends up being something weird.
Like I know
But
my local.
no, it's I know a lot of DMs do like to use thematic or environmental music for when they're doing that kind of thing. So that's cool.
I know my local game shop has been working about, those like smart tables that some places have.
Oh yeah, those are actually really nice because there's a lot of people making like pre-made digital maps and stuff.
Yeah, my local game store has been working like building their own kind of like off-brand one, because why drop 20 grand on one when they have TVs people have brought in that they're not in quite sellable quality, but they still function. So you put that in a cheap table, put some speakers to it, and oh look, tabletop RPG boys have something real nice they can play on. Rent that $10-15 a session. You're gonna make your money back.
It's really hard to use those kind of maps when you're playing in real life and not on a virtual tabletop.
Oh yeah,
but using a table like that lets you do that.
That's cool. That's really cool.
So yeah, I will let them know about this because they have been looking for like music libraries.
Mm-hmm.
So
Absolutely.
I will pass that along in our Discord for that.
Absolutely, yeah. The it's on Spotify, and also they can go to Bandcamp and get the music right from there for Ad Astra. Just to mention a couple more projects, just so I give a shout out to some cool people I got to work with. I got to work with Atavist Games from Fallen Crown. That I did the trailer music for that. That was sort of a fantasy, very subdued. It was interesting. It was a hard brief because the reference material was this very kind of dark, vampire, gothic, but then it also was very chill. And when you're doing a trailer, you want to have this progressive build and energy because you want to get people hyped. But then also, the reference material was extremely like subdued. And so trying to find the balance there of like wanting to get enough energy so you were excited for the game, but not going so far where you lost the vibe of this sort of creepy, dark, gothic choir feeling. And so that was really fun to balance out. And then again, writing to visuals. I also got to work on with Caffeine 10. I've worked with them in the past on Great Pilots, which is a fun little kind of side-scrolling shooter with planes. And this one, we were starting to work. And he's starting to work and expand into 3 dimensions, and is working on a project called Estonian War for Independence, based on the actual Estonian War for Independence, and trying to bring in listening to classical music written at the time in the 1917, 1920, I think it was. And listening to composers who were writing music at that time, so bringing in those influences, and then writing original music for the game, or for this game, and then also for this trailer, but bringing in those influences, so trying to get that vibe of what music sounded like in 1920 from current composers then.
Like, it's a small world sometimes, because we had Atavist Games on the program a few months ago to talk about Fallen Crown.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's great. Well, people should listen to that podcast for sure. And you can learn more there.
I suppose if people want to go to listen to that particular episode, it's on, well, not just Twitch, but it's on YouTube. You will want to look for Season 18, Episode 17A. We talk about Fallen Crown in length on that one.
If we remember, we'll try and put a link to it in the description, like especially on the YouTube page.
I have the episode up here, so I'll post it in the Discord. You can put it in the chat.
Fair.
So, anyway, it's like, I don't think we talked about the music on that too much with Larson, but because for those who don't know, Fallen Crown is a Game Boy Color title.
Mhm.
And I'm wondering, what was it like working in that space, that very, very cramped space?
The short answer to that is I worked on the trailer. I didn't actually work on the OST. So
There we go.
so I didn't have the limitation of a small digital space to work in. I would have loved the challenge to do that, and it would have been fun to figure out a way to do that. And limitations are good. In times you're being creative, when you can put limits on yourself, you can usually end up with a better result. So that would have been really fun. But I only worked on the trailer, unfortunately, for that particular project. So it wasn't. I didn't have that challenge.
Okay. That's fair.
Mhm.
So, besides the game we got showcased here, was there any other games in the past year that you actually did music for? Was it all trailer stuff?
Well, like I said, it's been a year in transition, so I've been doing a lot more trailer. I did a TV show pilot for a local director here in Albuquerque. There's a lot of Netflix shows and things are being produced down in Albuquerque, and so I've been sort of working my way into that world a bit, getting to work with Triple Audio Post in Albuquerque, and then working with Jay Clower on a TV show pilot called Post 1776, which is sort of a comedy about veterans, and writing music for that. So there's been, like I said, I'm still doing the independent video game stuff. I'm still writing the Kickstarter, all of those sort of things. And then, of course, like I said, professionally, I have shifted from being 100% all the time music, teaching music, writing music, etc., to now it is an extra thing. It has become a part-time thing, partly due to the fact that I am professionally working as a communications manager now, which I'm really loving and enjoying, but you have to kind of work balance. Like it's working two jobs, so I have to kind of balance the two out.
Yes, I suppose. So I suppose there are two other projects we should cover here,
Certainly.
and that's in the 2023 portfolio. The first of which is Greasers versus Aliens.
Yes.
With the comic book series trailer music. Now, if I'm which is another title from Daniel Cabalan, who we've had on the MSP show.
Nice.
We probably have him on again to talk about this thing.
It's forthcoming. That's going to be out 2024. So that's
yeah.
The current title he's working on is Rook and Knight, I believe, or Knight and Rook. I forget which order it is. And he just released that. I worked with him on American Dreams, the full soundtrack to that 2 years ago. I did the title music for Night Wrath, which was his kind of dark, kind of carnage style character. And then this new 50s Greasers versus Aliens, we went with for that music, and I'm sure that music will probably get used in the trailer. I wrote it again before seeing the trailer. They don't have the trailer yet, but they're gonna piece the trailer around the music in this case. And for that, it's a 50s horror movie, like B horror movie stuff. So like the Swamp Thing, Frankenstein, Dracula, 50s. That's sort of the vibe. So it's very orchestral, very dramatic, over the top, kind of verging on silly. And one of the things that you get with, like, so for example, Dracula, one of the scores from that, the actual music kind of quotes the name Dracula, Dracula. This is sort of the vibe. So we wanted to do that with the title Greasers versus Aliens. So what I ended up with was something along the lines of, I'm not the best singer, but it's Greasers versus Aliens. That's sort of the end joke, is that the music is literally saying the name of the thing, which is a classic 50s trope.
I'll have to take your word for it, since I'm not too familiar with 50s cinema.
It's all good. I wasn't either. I had to do some research for the project, and I enjoyed it because I got to hear some really great soundtracks that I had never really watched 50s B horror. I mean, it's a very niche thing, but I really enjoyed the process of getting to learn about it.
That's good. And as far as games go,
Sure.
we have Reflex Runner.
Now that is one I did do music for several of the levels. Again, it's a Reflex Runner. It's a leveled game, so leveled music made sense for it. And we did, I think I did 4 or 5 tracks for that as well. Again, these sort of smaller indie games in limited budgets, all of that stuff. But really excited to work with Apparetta on it. It was cool because it was a dad and his 2 kids were kind of making the game together, and so the kids had a lot of creative input. And so when I sent them music, I sent them like 3 or 4 demo tracks to kind of get the vibe down for that particular project. And it had this kind of slightly poppy, synthy sort of vibe. And his kids were the ones who actually picked the tracks that they liked of the stuff I was sending. So it was interesting. It was working creatively for the dad, but really it was working for the kids because they were getting to have the input. Which was a lot of fun. It was interesting to see what they would pick as the whole soundtrack unfolded. But once I kind of locked in the first track, then getting to do iterations and variations on it was pretty straightforward from there. I guess the poppiness of it, to give more clarity to that use of that term, more like very structured, like 4 or 8 bar loops. Chord progressions that are simple, 3 or 4 chords repeating over a cycle, that sort of style of writing music. Not quite as free-flowing and changing as you see in classical, where you have much more modulations and changing keys and stuff like that.
I'm not sure if I have anything else to add to that particular title.
No worries.
Indeed. Anyway, so is there anything you can talk about that's forthcoming that you haven't already mentioned?
Let's see. Well, I can't talk specifics, but I have been in talks with Nicholas Baldridge of For Amusement Games, and I know there's several things in the works on his side of things. Nicholas Baldridge, what I can say is I worked with him on Drained, wrote 50 tracks of music for that. That was a big project. That was a physical pinball machine. It's a physical pinball game, and I wrote 50 tracks of music over 80 sound effects, for that. And it was a vampire theme, so it has this kind of again, that gothic vampire vibe, which was really fun. Super fun, super dramatic. Used a lot of, I was listening to a lot of Handel, a lot of Vivaldi and Bach at the time, classical composers, and really got to imitate their style in this. And it was a lot of harpsichord and organ because it's vampires. And it was so much fun to work on that. So I'm excited to, anything that Daniel's doing is usually really cool. And so getting to work with him in the future, hopefully 2024 will be the year. This year we'll be back to collaborating again on a whole new something, but we'll have to see. It all has to do with timing and other things that is on his end, not mine. So, but hopefully we'll be back at it very soon.
Indeed. Well, I think we have reached the current end of the conversation, at least in terms of what can be talked about.
Sure.
And Charles, it was wonderful catching up over what you've been doing the past year. And we look forward to, hearing about it again, potentially next year. We'll see. So yeah, it's a bit hard to do the recommends for this because you have so many hands in so many projects. But I guess we'll give the shout out to the Jackie's Wacky Adventure, since you, that seems to, not just trailer, but you produced quite a bit of music, and from what I can tell, it is coming out here very soon. Planned release date of January 25th, 2024. Now, do you know if the soundtrack is going to be separately available?
I don't believe so. I think it'll be just part of the game at this point.
Okay.
If people want to listen to it separately, they can listen to it on my SoundCloud, Charles Wolf Composer. But that is the only other place that's going to be launched currently, outside of the trailer and the great game itself. But no, I normally don't release soundtracks separately beyond just on my SoundCloud. That's just freely available. I just find that the games that I'm working on, I want them to really stand apart that way. And so far, it just seemed to be best to keep them having the most of the music's in the game. So if you want to hear the music, play the game, because that's what we're here to do is play more games.
Indeed. And if you enjoyed tonight's interview, be sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell. And Petty, play us to the next segment. All right. Welcome to the topic of discussion. Now, there were a few things that we could have gone with this week, but in the end, we decided to go into an perhaps unexpected direction. Because we are going to be finally talking about Sonic Prime. I don't think we've actually talked about Sonic Prime before, which is kind.
Doubt we
I
have.
think we've.
Honestly, I
Hmm?
mostly missed that it was that it had. I mean, I found out that it had wrapped up recently, but
Well, here's the thing: we
because of
don't
my
know.
particular modes of engagement, I heard the first thing, but then didn't really hear much about the other seasons.
I'm like, that's probably something to do. That probably has something to do with the Netflix hype cycle more than
Yeah.
anything else.
Mm-hmm.
As far as ratings go, at least I guess what passes for ratings seem to be really good.
Yeah, no, I'm not trying to make a comment on the quality, just on mostly on it being a Netflix thing that dropped in the way that it did. So I kind of missed it.
Yeah. I mean, that is understandable, especially with season 3. Like, season 3 here had the most Netflixy release out of the 3 seasons.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
I
mean,
honestly didn't know there was a season 3 till it showed up on my watch list.
Yeah. Like, there was a ton of chatter about season 1.
Yeah, because
Like,
it was the most recent like Sonic animated thing since what, X? No,
that
Boom.
might
There was the
depend on
Boom
how.
cartoon. That's right.
Yeah. That might depend on how you want to count the movie. Like,
Oh God, I still need to watch those. I should
you
watch
don't
those at some
need to
point.
watch it. I guess. I'm like,
I mean, we
they're
have
fine.
the was it Peacock? It's on now.
Paramount Plus.
Oh, Paramount Plus. I think we still have that, so it's like it won't cost me anything to go watch them. It's time investment.
Right. I mean, that's probably about, let's say, 3 hours for both movies.
Something like that, yeah.
I mean, they're kids' movies, so they're going to be, 1.5 to 2 hours at most.
Mm-hmm.
So, but anyway, we're not talking about those. We're talking about Sonic Prime, which is Sonic's 6th television series.
Mm-hmm. Well, I guess air quotes television on this one. This was streaming only. Everything
It
else,
counts.
yeah, fair.
No, we're well past the quotes period of streaming shows. Like, they are very legitimate. Here in the year of 2024, like, and Sonic Prime has been the most adequate of them all.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's so like it's not quite it's a bit better than so okay it's average. Like it had a bit of a pulse to it, but
Mm-hmm.
like there were choices, some choices that have been remarked on, like all Green Hill Zone all the time.
Yeah. And
Like,
literally no other Sonic characters outside of the core three, Amy, Shadow, Rouge, and Big.
Well,
yeah,
and the thing with this one is that there was some deal made about it being canon, unlike all of the previous
Insert
animated
joke
things.
about whatever the fuck's canon in the Sonic universe.
I mean,
Yeah,
true, and also this one is canon kind of in the same way as Sonic 06 is.
yeah, it's like the canonicity of that is because is being touted because I think the writing people on this were or are working on the games.
Mm-hmm.
But once again, that doesn't mean much. It's Sonic the Hedgehog.
Yeah. It's one
Yeah,
of those
but it
things
means a
kind of
lot
like
to certain. It means a lot to certain segments of the fan base.
Oh, I know that, but here's the thing: that doesn't matter. Like, it's
the
still
canon of Sonic is kind of like Family Guy. It resets to 0 after everything.
it sometimes does, it sometimes doesn't. It depends on the game and what they're doing. Like
Fair.
Sonic Mania. That has a shit ton of continuity because that is a love letter to the 16-bit games.
Mm-hmm.
And like Sonic Forces, it connects to Sonic Mania because of that jewel. And they were both released the same year, so they said, let's get the synergy going.
Yeah.
But so now as far as this being the final season, it's the final season of Sonic Prime, but they ended it on and then the adventure continues.
Right.
So that doesn't mean they're going to make more of it, and apparently it was initially stated to be a 24 episode or whatever show.
Right, but here's the thing. If stuff's still popular enough, it gets sequels.
Yeah, we are well aware of this.
Yeah. So don't be too surprised if we get Sonic Prime Rib dropping in a couple years' time.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they're not actually going to call it that. I'm just hungry.
Yeah.
Like
Sonic Prime 2.
Yeah. Like the point the point is they left the door open enough to where if they get the green light on a sequel series, they can do it.
God, I forgot
But
how
it's
heavy
like if
Sonic
they
was in
don't,
Forces. Okay, never mind. This is
yeah. But if they don't, here's the thing. Like, I can tell you how it ends because it is the vaguest thing imaginable. It's like everything's restored to normal. The Green Hill Zone is at peace. Like, if you consider this a spoiler, it's a Sonic title.
yeah.
Like,
What rock have you been hiding under, and is there room for one more?
yeah, it's like this is still a thing for children.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Oh yeah, like fucking 10-year-old me would have loved this.
I don't doubt it. Like, but anyway, getting back to my point, or what I'm, it's like they're on, they're at Green Hill Zone, they're having a picnic, and suddenly some vague force is attacking,
Mm-hmm.
and they're very non-specific about the threat.
Yeah.
It's like, can you believe that this is happening?
This,
kind
of
of
all
deal.
days, of a day that ends in fucking Y.
Yeah, it's like, it could be chaos, it could be Mephiles, it could be Charmy the Bee. Uh,
God. Somebody has probably made a super crazy comic of some kind where Charmy just goes postal.
possibly.
Link it in chat later.
I'm like, granted, that would require this series to acknowledge that the Chaotix team exists. Like,
They have a few times.
yeah, I mean, like on screen, not as a they're alive somewhere off screen.
They might not be dead.
Like anyway, you get my point. It's like, whatever is causing trouble hasn't been named in any sort of fashion. So, should they get the green light for a sequel, they can just cut and paste Silver Sonic, Metal Sonic. I'm like, maybe not, quite, because it is like a torrent of water, or, elemental power. It does make me think that of all things, it would be chaos, but it's still vague.
Yeah.
And as far as the series ending, like, I'm fine with it. Honestly, this season felt the most. How do I put this? It most engaged in that streaming spinning of the wheels.
This last season felt like they shouldn't have made it a season.
Yeah, like, that's what I'm talking about. It was. This is the same kind of problem like the Netflix Marvel shows had, and it's like when it's one long continuous story, but it's like you didn't have enough for 7 episodes.
Right.
So the material gets stretched thin, and it feels like it's being stretched thin. Unlike other seasons, like season 1 was much more episodic.
Yeah.
And that's when the series was at its had the most potential.
Yeah, season
because,
1 was let's go tour all the different shards. Season 2 was the let's get the band together. Season 3 is why the fuck does this exist?
Well, season 3 is, Ninetales is all angsty and wants to destroy reality in order to keep
make
his
out with Sonic. Wait, what?
I mean,
somebody has already made that comic and you know it.
like I'd be surprised if it was just 1 or 12. Like Sonic and Tails doing unspeakable things to each other. I've seen that. I'm like, way, way too many times. Granted, more than 0 is way too many.
That is valid.
Like, my point is, like, Sonic and Tails is a popular pairing. It shouldn't be, but it is.
It's literally like, two brothers making out, which is weird. Stop it.
Especially when one of them is twice the other one's age.
No, they're not quite twice, but
it's still a bit of an
might
age.
be older than Tails, but I'm pretty sure Tails is supposed to be 8.
Yeah.
No, they adjusted that now. It's as far as the canon ages now, I think it's Tails is 12 and Sonic's around 16, 17 now.
I'm like, this is the point where we reevaluate our life choices.
Yeah, bro. I'm just gonna debate looking into the bottom of a barrel right now.
That's probably not the worst idea. Anyway, I'm like, anyway, like a lot of the initial appeal of this show was, what new worlds will Sonic meet? What new alternate versions of, the principal cast will appear? Like, and
But they won't be
all
wearing
that.
black leather jackets because Ken Penders owns that.
Let's not bring him into this. Look, we've already had enough weird sex shit. I'm like, that's true. I'm like, look, he's the guy who wanted, Princess
Yes,
Sally
we
to.
know.
So, anyway, so getting back to what I was saying, by season 3, all of the exploratory stuff is gone, but we still have quite the large cast. Like there are a shitload of Amy's.
There's an Amy, Tails, Knuckles, Big, and Rouge for each shard.
Right, but I'm talking by season 3. By season 3, they do parse down the alternate versions quite a bit. Like the only Rouge that's around is the New York City Rouge, for example, as opposed to there's just a whole squad of Amy's in season 3. There's there's Rose Thorn. There's Pirate Amy. I don't remember her name. There's
Captain Blackthorn.
Yeah, Captain Blackthorn. There's Bird Amy. Like, which is weird. And there's also Badnik Amy.
Rusty Rose.
Yeah, Rusty Rose. There we go. Look, this is another consequence of having so many different versions of a character around with different names. It's like, okay, which one was which? Like,
whom be whom?
Yeah. And some of them have a decent amount of character development. Surprising. It's not amazing because it's still a Sonic title.
Yeah.
Like, and Shadow the Hedgehog is just Shadow the Hedgehog. There's no more of him, thank God.
Yeah.
Like he's his usual self.
Indeed.
I mean, there are a few different versions of Big the Cat. Like, one version that shows up in season 3 is British, upper class British, Big.
Pirate Big gets hit in the head and ends up being a proper Brit gentleman.
Yeah. So now he's a privateer. And then I forget what reason Tails makes Main Tails makes a big robot.
Yeah, that's a thing that happened.
I mean, that's kind of how I would describe season 3.
Well,
for
and
the
not
most
only
part.
did he make a big robot, he made it so apparently it can be palatable for some reason, because that makes sense.
Right. I mean, it makes as much sense as anything else.
I guess fair.
Like, and I guess they figured that because they had 5 Robotniks in New York City, we wouldn't get any, we didn't get Pirate Robotnik or Primitive Robotnik.
Yeah, that's definitely a miss in my opinion.
Well, it's like, I got tired of the Egg Council after a certain amount of time.
It would have been better if they split them up between the shards and they got together and,
Yeah, like, yeah,
became a
I
threat.
know. It's like, I'm sure some people were amused by Baby Robotnik.
It was amusing for like half of the first season, and then it got old.
Yeah, yeah. Could have done with more Orbot and Qbot.
Yeah.
Well, I'm like, hell, like, we could have got, if this series were actually clever, we could have gotten Scratch and Grounder.
Oh, good lord, bro.
Like, but like I said, that
At least they're
probably
like
would have
actual
required-
badniks, although Scratch is not seen inside the turret that all of the other chicken ones do.
I mean, technically speaking, they could have done Grounder and Coconut because those are two actual badniks in Sonic 2.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Anyway, like I said, Sonic Prime, it's adequate. I guess if I had to rank it among the great spectrum of Sonic series, it's not as good as Sonic Boom. It's nowhere near as good as Sonic Saturday Morning. Like, better than obviously the Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog and Sonic Chaos or Sonic Underground. Sorry,
A little bit hard to rate Adventures of on the same scale as everything else since its purpose. The closest thing to compare it to, hilariously, would be Sonic Boom, because they're the ones that are mostly about jokes.
True. I would put this above Sonic X.
It depends on the season.
I'm like, well, it's like it doesn't have Chris Thorndyke in it.
I mean, fair.
Like like this one didn't say, "Hey, we have to have kids in this in order to have the kids relate."
Yeah.
Like I mean, now Sonic is by far not the only franchise to fall into this fucking trap, but it's like, no, you don't need human analogs for for kids to like the
kids
main
don't want to
characters.
watch something without an actual human kid in it is easily disprovable, and yet for some reason it keeps coming back into the quote-unquote common wisdom of,
I mean, good God,
fucking
the amount
studio
of times
execs.
Transformers has fallen into this fucking trap. Like,
We could set our watch to it.
eh.
I have a question, if I may. How was Jacksepticeye as Jack in Sonic Prime?
I honestly forgot he was in there.
Yeah, I'm like, I think that's your
So
I
answer.
haven't seen it.
Horrible,
That's why I'm asking. I haven't seen it. That's why I'm asking. But how was he? I'm just curious. YouTuber, did it translate? Did it work?
I guess.
As far as I can tell, like,
Sounds like it did, because you. That's good. That's a win, I guess.
like it wasn't bad enough that it stood as being bad type deal,
Cool.
but
Great.
so
Great.
Yeah, it looks like he was in a decent number of episodes. I'm not sure if it was a major role or anything.
That's fair.
He's from the pirate world, apparently. Which
Pirate named
meshes
Jack?
with what I've heard of Jacksepticeye's accent, at least. I know that's just mostly because he's Irish or whatever, but
Anyway, I think that'll about do it on Sonic Prime here, and indeed that'll about wrap it up for this installment of Fragments of Silicon. So, coming up on the week ahead, on Friday, January 19th, we'll be welcoming Joe Humphrey of Inkle to the broadcast at a special time. Usually we broadcast out at 11 a.m. This time around, we're going to be at noon sharp because he had to pick up his kid at 11, so we had to work around that. Like, Anyway, we will be talking about Inkle's latest, a Highland Song, which we specifically Galax reviewed back in December. So, anyway, I always look forward to having Inkle on the program. It's been a while, so once again, I look forward to it.
Mhm.
Kind of lost the word there. Anyway, so we do have a new episode of MSP planned. Looks like it's going to be. Well, Max says he might be late. I'm going to put that in the percentile of 95 to 99%. Still, that's a better showing than recent. Anyway, so coming up on the Sunday reviews, we'll be having reviews of Impaler, 8 Color Star Guardians, Toaster Ball, and Balance, or Balance, with a ball pun in there. So, until next time, I shall wish you good gaming.